Dear friends, you're watching the Ruslan Belov channel, and this is your daily analytical briefing from the Ukrainian front. Now, let's get to it. Mali, the second front nobody talks about. Today's agenda covers several genuinely serious topics, and I want to start with the one that gets far less attention than it deserves. We're talking about the African theatre of operations, specifically Mali, in the region around the city of Kidal, in the north of the country. The African Corps, a Russian military formation engaged in counter-terrorism operations against armed groups controlling parts of Malian territory, has been operating there for quite some time now. And here's what's interesting. After one of the militants was eliminated, a patch belonging to the GURMO of Ukraine, the main Directorate of Intelligence of the Ministry of Defense, was found on the body. This is not a rumor, not speculation. This is a documented fact, supported by photographic evidence. What does this mean in practice? It means that Ukrainian military intelligence is actively working with armed formations in Mali, whether as instructors, handlers, or direct participants. The confrontation between Russia and Ukraine has long since broken out of the boundaries of a single theatre of war. In effect, a second front has been opened, asymmetric, far from the Donbas line, but entirely real. Russia is fighting on two fronts, and so is Ukraine. It's just not something that tends to make prime time. The front, ceasefire and micro-advances. Now to the main theatre of operations. A formal ceasefire is in effect, announced for the period of May 9-11. Accordingly, no major changes on the map should be expected during these days. However, even under a ceasefire, the front doesn't go completely quiet. Localized fighting continues, and some advances are still being recorded. Luhansk Oblast. The final touch. First area, Luhansk Oblast. A few weeks ago, it was officially announced that the entire oblast was under Russian control. However, a careful review of objective control footage suggested that claim was somewhat premature. Now, fresh footage has emerged that confirms it. Fighters of the Western grouping have completed the clearing operation and established full control over the village of Nadia. This is one of the last settlements in the oblast that had remained outside Russian control. As of today, what effectively remains is 1.5 settlements. One, Novoye and part of the neighboring settlement of the same name. Once those are secured, it will be fully justified to say that every populated locality in Luhansk Oblast has come under the control of the Russian armed forces. The final chord in a protracted operation. Lyman direction, Yarova second area. The Lyman direction, the town-type settlement of Yarova. The advance here is genuinely minimal, under 200 meters. But this is movement through residential built-up areas, where every meter is won in close-quarters combat. In that context, even small tactical gains carry weight as they shape the operational picture going forward. Kostiantynivka, the assault reaches its climax. The Kostiantynivka direction deserves separate attention, as events there are taking on a genuinely climactic character. The assault on Kostiantynivka, within the area of responsibility of the southern grouping, has entered its decisive phase. Russian units have effectively completed the seizure of the high-rise residential districts in the southwestern part of the city and have now begun storming the industrial zone, traditionally one of the most demanding elements of urban warfare. Simultaneously, a breakthrough into the central part of the city has been recorded along both banks of the Kryvyi Torets River. This is a significant operational success. Holding bridgeheads on both banks substantially complicates the organization of defense for Ukrainian forces. Here is the key point. If Russian units succeed in taking full control of the industrial zone, Ukrainian forces in the southern part of Kostiantynivka will find themselves operationally encircled. Given that the industrial zone is the last convenient defensive line in that part of the city, its loss will almost automatically trigger a rapid collapse of Ukrainian control over a significant portion of Kostiantynivka. For the AFU, Armed Forces of Ukraine, on this direction, the situation is shaping up as a genuine catastrophe. Kupiansk direction. The fiercest fighting, ceasefire or not. Here is the paradox of this ceasefire. The most intense combat activity is unfolding precisely on the Kupiansk direction. Despite the official cessation of hostilities, Heavy engagements are being recorded here, and the operational situation remains extremely tense. On the eastern flank, Russian units are advancing toward Novosinov. The task is far from straightforward. A powerful defensive line has been prepared in front of the village, with an extensive network of trenches and reinforced bunkers. Novosinov itself sits on commanding high ground, giving Ukrainian observers excellent visibility, meaning Russian fighters on the approach are under constant observation. Despite all of this, Russian forces have managed to advance on a wide front between Pivden and Pivnishna Pishchene by 4 kilometers. That is a meaningful tactical result given the terrain. At the same time, work is underway to expand the logistics corridor southeast of Kurylyvka. The objective is to eliminate the risk of Russian units being cut off in the event of Ukrainian counterattacks on this section. A prudent precaution. Under active combat conditions, logistics matter no less than frontline fighting power. In the Kupiansk area, Ukrainian units are attacking with small assault groups. The primary goal of Ukrainian command on this section is to cut the logistics route toward Dvorichna. From the Kurylyvka direction, fighting continues on the approaches to Kovsharivka and Kupiansk-Vuzlovyi. The latter is the key logistics hub on this section of the front, which is precisely why Ukrainian command has committed its main available reserves there. It is also worth noting the sharp increase in Ukrainian drone activity on the Kupiansk direction. Maximum numbers of UAV crews are being deployed, with active use of FPV strike drones and heavy octocopters of the Baba Yaga type, all of which significantly hampers Russian advances and inflicts additional losses. In Kupiansk itself, the situation remains under control, with no significant changes. Geran 5, a new benchmark in strike drone technology. The Russian Ministry of Defense has for the first time officially demonstrated the launch of a new strike unmanned aircraft, the Geran 5. And there is a great deal to say here, because this is already a fundamentally different machine compared with where the program started. As a reminder, the first geraniums entered active service in 2023. They were relatively simple loitering munitions, effective but modest in their characteristics. The Geran 5 is already, in practical terms, a cruise missile in everything but name. Consider, the aircraft is 6 meters long, with a wingspan of 5.5 meters, a speed exceeding 500 kilometers per hour, a range of up to 1,000 kilometers, and a warhead mass of 90 kilograms. The aerodynamics of the airframe make it clear. This is not a conventional UAV. It is a high-speed strike platform that fundamentally surpasses all previous modifications. The launch method demonstrated in the footage also deserves attention. The Geran 2 series launch is carried out from a moving pickup truck, with the crew operator initiating the launch directly from inside the vehicle cab. The vehicle's movement imparts additional launch velocity to the aircraft, while the mobility of the launch platform makes it significantly harder for the enemy to detect and engage. This is no longer the positional drone warfare of earlier years. This is a mobile strike platform with minimal reaction time and maximum concealment. Hello, dear friends. You're watching the Ruslan, an underwater strike at global infrastructure. Now, to geopolitics. And this is a genuinely compelling story because Iran is making a move that could affect literally anyone with a smartphone, a bank card, or a subscription to any cloud service. The Fars news agency reports that Tehran has unilaterally established rules for the use of telecommunications cables laid along the seabed of the Strait of Hormuz. What exactly are these cables, and why does it matter? Underwater cables running through the Strait of Hormuz carry between 17 and 30% of global internet traffic. This is primarily traffic originating from data centers located in the Persian Gulf. And over the past several years, American IT corporations have poured tens of billions of dollars into this infrastructure. Google, Microsoft, Meta, all of them are connected to this cable network in one way or another. Through the Red Sea, meanwhile, run approximately 17 additional submarine cables linking Europe, Asia, and Africa. Iran has declared the following rights: to require authorization for the use of cable infrastructure in its territorial waters, to levy fees on foreign operators, to apply Iranian national legislation to the operation of those cables, and to grant Iranian companies priority in technical management, maintenance, and repair. And the critical point, should these conditions be refused, the Iranian armed forces reserve the right to physically destroy the strategic telecommunications infrastructure. What happens if that occurs? Analysts project significant slowdown of internet services on a global scale, disruptions to international banking systems, failures across cloud platforms and artificial intelligence infrastructure. In effect, a strike at the digital backbone of the Western economy. Tehran is presenting all of this as a mirror response to the damage inflicted on Iran during the American-Israeli military campaign. Not an initiative, but a countermeasure. An underwater card that has been sitting on the table, waiting. NATO in panic. Russia is still stronger. Europe is sounding the alarm again. EU Defense Commissioner Andrius Kubilius has made a stark declaration. Russia continues to outmatch NATO in military terms, and by a considerable margin. Coming from a European official, this is a remarkably candid admission. Russia is ahead of us, quite significantly, and that is what concerns us. A direct quote. Kubilius called on alliance members to urgently scale up military production and warned that the possibility of Russian aggression against EU or NATO members is real. He noted the symbolic significance of agreements being signed in Warsaw on the eve of Russia's Victory Day. Under the SAFE program, initial tranches have already been allocated. Poland will receive 43 billion euros, Lithuania 6 billion. The funds are earmarked for border infrastructure reinforcement, air defense development, and military modernization. Lithuania plans to direct a portion of its allocation toward the procurement of weapons and equipment for Ukraine. Notably, even Hungary, which has traditionally maintained a distinct position on military assistance, has submitted an application to participate in the program. Germany, the fuel crisis and the threat of aviation collapse. And finally, a story from Germany that neatly illustrates just how far the consequences of modern armed conflicts can reach in an interconnected world. German media are reporting a real threat of mass flight cancellations due to a shortage of aviation fuel. According to the head of the Association of German Airports, Ralph Beisel, the fuel crisis, driven by the consequences of the war with Iran, could render civilian air transport economically unviable. Fuel costs have always constituted a significant share of airline operating expenses, and a sharp rise in the price of kerosene hits the industry with particular severity. The projections are as follows. In the best-case scenario, 2026 will be a year of stagnation for German air passengers. In the worst case, certain airports could face a drop in capacity of up to 10%. Extrapolated across the entire German airport network, that figure translates to approximately 20 million passengers affected, a number that is difficult to dismiss. Strategic analysis, 106,000 tons on the Dobrovolya direction. And now, arguably the central military analytical story of today's episode. AFU Commander-in-Chief Syrskyi has stated that Russia has concentrated 25 brigades on the Dobrovolya direction, totaling approximately 106,000 servicemen, a corps, a full army corps, on a single operational direction. This claim has independent corroboration. Information from a soldier directly on the ground was reaching us before Syrskyi brought the figure into the public domain. According to that source, new regiments and brigades are being continuously fed into the sector, and there are now so many personnel that real problems with accommodation have emerged. When soldiers are running out of space, that is not simply a reserve rotation. That is preparation for something large-scale. The logic behind concentrating such a force is readable enough. The task is to break through the main lines of Ukrainian defense on the Dobrovolya direction, advance northward toward Ocherityne, and thereby sever the key logistics artery linking Pavlohrad and Kramatorsk. The Ukrainian defensive system here is heavily echeloned. 2 defense lines behind Dobrovolya, 3 lines before Bilozerske. Then an operational void running all the way to the 4th line covering the Pavlohrad-Kramatorsk highway. If Russian forces manage to reach that highway by autumn, while the southern grouping approaches Sloviansk by that point, the operational situation for the Ukrainian side will become critical. The front will rapidly compress to the Kramatorsk-Sloviansk agglomeration. That is the projected scenario. if everything proceeds according to plan. There is, however, an alternative perspective, and it deserves serious consideration. The concentration of such forces, specifically on the Dobrovolya direction, raises questions among analysts familiar with the fortification map. Consider the contrast. On the Dobrovolya section, Ukrainian defenses are saturated with multiple echelons of reinforced positions, anti-tank ditches and minefields. This is one of the best prepared defensive sectors along the entire front. The Zaporizhzhia Oblast presents a completely different picture. The defensive lines there are far more sparse, and the defensive infrastructure is incomparably less developed. Where the Dobrovolya section requires grinding through multi-echelon defenses, meter by meter, the Zaporizhzhia direction would allow for significantly more rapid movement. With over 100,000 soldiers concentrated there, reaching Zaporizhzhia from the east would become a question of weeks rather than months. Why Dobrovolya rather than Zaporizhzhia? The most likely answer is that the decision reflects the pursuit of one of the key political objectives, establishing full control over the Donbas. The Zaporizhzhia direction, despite its tactical advantages, was effectively frozen for a period. Ukrainian command shifted to active offensive operations in Dnipropetrovsk Oblast, disrupting a portion of Russian operational planning. For 3 months, no significant advances have been recorded on that section. Hence, the reorientation of the main effort toward the central grouping and the Dobrovolya direction. The logic is understandable, even if operational questions remain. As for Putin's statement that things are moving toward a conclusion, 3 scenarios present themselves. First, Kyiv agrees to withdraw forces from the Donbas. Extremely unlikely. Zelensky has categorically and repeatedly ruled this out. Second, a freeze along the current contact line. By all indications, this is equally unacceptable to the Russian side. Third, before year's end, a major offensive blow is delivered, resulting in at minimum the capture of the entire Donbas, after which Ukraine finds itself in a position where negotiations become unavoidable. The third scenario is the most logically consistent with the current troop concentration. Let us be clear, this is analysis based on open-source data, and nothing more. The actual information landscape inside the general staffs is incomparably more complex and multidimensional. That's all for today, friends. Subscribe to the channel and hit the bell. Without it, YouTube simply won't show these episodes to most of you. Take care of yourselves. Peace and goodwill to all. Until the next episode.